Well, welcome everybody to the Town of Richmond Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. Looks like we don't have any guests except for Tom Astley from MMC-TV. Welcome, Tom, at the moment. So we'll start by quickly reviewing the agenda that we have to make sure nobody wants to alter that or add anything. Any comments about the agenda that we've got going for today? No. Okay, not hearing any comments, so we'll continue with the posted agenda. That's fine. No public members, so there will be no comments on the agenda or alterations there. Let's go to number 4, review the minutes of the 4/16/25 meeting. The April 16th meeting. Anybody have any corrections or additions or changes they want to make to those meetings minutes? Okay, not hearing any, we will accept those minutes into the record as written. And we'll go on to item number 5, which is to review the select board hearing that was just this past Monday on our Jolina Court and associated amendments. So most of you, let's see, Chris, Ian, Mark, were all there anyway, so they already know what the outcome was. Basically, the select board rejected our documents as written. They had some suggestions, and based on the testimony from Buttermilk, that they were losing a lot of money by having building 1 not be able to be leased out. They set up a stepwise revision that they want us to carry out. So step 1 that we have been asked to do or required to do is to alter our zoning such that all except for the unit that faces Bridge Street, the rest of building 1 ground floor can be made residential. So the schedule for that is we're going to talk about it and agree, hopefully in theory tonight, on how we're going to do that. We're going to approve it to send back to the select board at our next meeting, and they will talk about it at their June 2nd meeting. So that's what they're going to do. That's what they want from us now, or they need from us. Then at that meeting on June 2nd, they're going to give us our next instructions for step 2, how they want this to be revised. And they are going to tell us, they haven't yet, but we assume they'll continue with their thinking, that the density, the base density should be increased to match the village downtown density, which is 24 units per developable acre. And the way they talked about it at the meeting is with or without the density bonus unit program. So whether they come back with a specific recommendation, such as increase the base density to 24 units per acre, do not have the density bonus program, or they might say increase it, the base density to 24 units per acre and have the residential density bonus program, or they might say increase it somewhat, but use the residential density bonus program to get to 24 units per developable acre. So we don't know if they're going to be more specific. You know, their original language was around explore such and such, but we indicated that, you know, they might as well be specific because we don't want to do something and then have them send it back again. So that's the program. And then the third step is, which is sort of connected to the second step, but may take longer, is to examine this concept that was suggested by Lock Park and Kara to create some kind of alternative traffic pattern to deal with these extra people that will be coming in and out of the Jolina Court Road. So there are some issues there. The suggestion was to utilize the land that FEMA was acquiring with a buyout of some of the houses down towards the river from the town center building. Those do go underwater, and it may not actually be allowed by FEMA to put any impervious surfaces on them. That's a question. Do we want to put more roads into the area that's going to be flooded? Is that a good idea? Do we want to put a road through this now very large neighborhood that we've created? You know, do we want to direct Bridge Street traffic through this neighborhood
Right.
of now 90 units? So there are many questions associated with that. Josie and Brendan are not going to be commencing construction anytime soon on building 2. They are not going to be commencing construction, per Josie to me, before July 1st, 2027. So interim 1B is not going to be a factor. They would like 1B because they would like to commence construction after July 1st, 27, and they would like us to have opted in to 1B at that point. So we need to think about that. That may or may not be in the instructions that are given to us on June the 2nd. But they will eventually, it will eventually come up. So that's the plan. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments or.
I do.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
I was going to say, I didn't think it was, I mean, I guess I had a slightly different take on the meeting than you did, Virginia. I didn't feel like our proposal was rejected outright, as you suggest. I think that there's a lot of thinking and a lot of perspectives on what we brought forward, and that, you know, depending on, you can read the minutes now, which are pretty rough still, I think, but give you an idea of the variety of positions and perspectives that were sort of evolving over the course of the meeting. The thing that I think that I do agree with you on, though, is that we were given a clear direction to address building 1, which was not obviously in our proposal. And I guess the question I have is, why are we taking till next meeting to do that? Could we do that this meeting?
Well, the question is whether it's adequately warned.
Ah,
That's
right.
the reason that I didn't want to say that we would do it at this meeting for the next select board meeting, because I would like to see it on a warning of ours that says we are proposing to allow commercial to be removed from building 1, you know, to have it out there in the world for good transparency as to what it is that we're actually doing. So,
Right. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
so we can, you know, we can talk about it and approve it conceptually tonight. I think that's fine. I think that would be good. And then just have the exact language refined for our next meeting that we're just going to whip through and say, yep, approve.
And my understanding was that what everybody seemed to be getting behind, including Brendan and Josie, was not a removal of the commercial requirement, but a reduction of that so that it would only apply to that 1,000 square feet or so that's in the front-facing ground floor unit.
Right. So it's 900 square feet. That first unit is 900 square feet. So they would like to utilize, possibly, Josie said, if they can get the money to actually reconstruct it as residences. You know, what 4 or 5 residences they might be able to put in there in that back half. One thing, and Keith and I did mock up some language, but one thing that has occurred to me is this is for the Jolina Court zoning district. So it's got to apply also to the Richmond Community Kitchen. Something, you know, the way we write it, I think, wouldn't you say, Keith? I mean, that occurred to me later as I was thinking about it, is we are writing it as if Buttermilk, the creamery is the only property. When we say building one,
Right.
we would have to, I mean, possibly we could specify the creamery's building number one, but it seems like what we want is something for the Jolina Court zoning district to have any unit that faces onto Bridge Street be required to be commercial, and that would include like the Richmond Community Kitchen not being changed to a residence. I don't know. That was a little confusing to think about.
Yeah, I would agree. I didn't even think about that when we were discussing that today. But we certainly could put, the district and not necessarily the specific parcel, which is 2 parcels is the district,
Right.
in the PUD section. So, I mean, that's the main change is the PUD section with this first iteration of the changes.
Yep, this will be a very simple change. It will just change the language in section 512, which is the PUD section, that says residential units, uses are only allowed in the JC district on the 2nd floor and above, or the basement floor, the sub-ground floor, if that exists. This is just going to say residential uses are allowed on any floor except for the first, 900 square feet of the creamery parcel, and then RCK, presumably that unit. And, I don't know if we need to talk to Bob Hines, who owns the RCK building. What if he has in mind that he would like to convert it to a house sometime? Is that okay? Or do we want that also to remain as a commercial space?
Well, I would think that it would remain as a commercial space because there aren't very many residences along Bridge Street in the commercial district. I mean, I think that's the point as to why we're leaving the 900 square feet facing Bridge Street as is. It doesn't really effectively change anything at RCK. So, but
No,
we should
it's not.
definitely delve into it for sure. Yeah, I mean, we didn't really spend any time on that today and got to sort of marinate on that.
Yeah, and if we're going to put that in, I think we need to at least notify Robert Hines that we're doing that in case somewhere in his mind he's thinking, well, I have all these options. One of them I could change it into a residence. If we don't want that to happen, then
And I think that's another impetus to kick this down to the next meeting also, is to give us time to talk to him also. And the statute says to do the changes promptly. Today would have been pretty prompt, I'll tell you that. But I think having that 2-week lag is a good thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you, Chris, that they didn't reject all of our ideas. It's just that our particular proposal was not approved.
Well,
the way we
didn't
presented
take
it.
Just, they didn't rubber stamp it. Yeah, they want to, and I'm glad they didn't. I mean, I think they need to. This has been a long and difficult process in the town, and I think if they had just whipped through it, they probably would have paid a political price later on. So hopefully, they'll all think through carefully what they want to do. But I didn't hear a lot of pushback on the general ideas that we had. I think they want to put their own perspective on it, but I felt like they welcomed the ideas that we put forward.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And we had really talked about all the options that they were talking about also, and came to a slightly different conclusion to present to them. But, we didn't really have the attendance of the public at our meetings. So,
I would like to go on the record and say that Lock Park, as usual, didn't submit or participate in our deliberations at all, but chose to wait until the select board and, after the debate in the planning commission was over in order to submit his comments.
I'm sure that was by design.
Yeah.
Totally by design.
And day 0, the day of the select board public hearing. So, but of course, that's people's option, and that is how they often work. They don't bother to waste time with the advisory group. They just go straight to the top. Anyway.
So I do have a I have a couple clarifying items, if I may. We were sort of tasked with looking into the height issue, seeing if we could remove the 35-foot height issue, and that's currently in process. But going back to the road, that would be to the south, and spitting out on Bridge Street. That's really not a zoning issue. That is more of a site plan issue for the DRB. I don't see how you would zone that into it. I mean, we already have the regulations for wetlands and the like. They have to go through the state regardless. Also, another clarifying
Keith,
point. Yep, go ahead, Bob.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think there's some background there, and it's certainly a question I have that might be useful for other people too.
Mhm.
Is it the case, because Kara brought this up and I hadn't heard about it before, but is it the case that the two residential properties on the, what is that? That's the
South,
the
south.
east side, well, whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
of Bridge Street are they have applications in for FEMA buyouts?
That is
Both?
correct.
Okay, so the idea is that would enable a road to be extended through the backs of those two properties to the creamery parcel.
Right.
Is that the idea?
Right.
Oh,
That
okay.
is
I just
that-
want to
that-
make it clear, because I'm not sure everybody
Yeah.
understood that, yeah.
And there are
There's
three properties there. One of them did not apply for a buyout.
Which
Is that
was
the yellow house?
Yeah, the yellow house.
Yeah.
The Dwyer house and the Gifford
Oh, the
house.
Dwyer house, I forgot about them,
So
yeah.
there are three houses in there and two of them applied, and, you know, I don't know if Bard sent around to everyone that picture of them underwater. He
don't
sent
know.
it to
Yeah. The yellow
us.
house is the one that really needs the buyout.
Right. So anyway, they're all underwater. And of course, Lower Bridge Street is underwater. So maybe it doesn't make any difference that this other road is underwater. And there's
Well,
also a question about these endangered species that are in that wetland area in the lower part of the property, the buttermilk property, that I wanted to go and reread the Act 250 permit, which discusses them. So
Yeah, and it's also mapped, it is mapped on their site plan. Also, Tina Heath came out and did all that mapping, I believe. But to finish my thought on the road issue, that's more of an exercise to see if we should increase the density in there.
mhm.
I think it would make it more palatable if that was the case. If it's not the case, which I suspect it's not, because these are buyouts and those need to stay open. I don't think you could have any hard surfacing there, but we're researching that right now. We should have something in the next few days on that. So I just want to make sure that's the clarifying aspect of this. Really isn't a zoning issue, but it could be as a result of, can we build a road there or not? So I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and it's not a zoning issue, but it is related to the density question.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
do
totally.
we want to, how many units do we want to put there if we can't do this?
Right.
And there aren't any other options for managing the traffic. The traffic, if it's all residential, may not be a huge problem anyway, but, the idea of having a one-way street going through the middle of the Jolina Court neighborhood, which we've now put all these houses in, is a little discomforting to me, but anyway.
Yeah.
We're not tasked just yet with talking about the density. They're going
Right.
to figure out, we hope, or anyway, that's going to be our assignment on June 2nd. They're going to start us talking about that. So at our first June meeting, which is June 4th, we'll have to talk about that because it looks like nobody is going to be able to come to the meeting on the 18th, our second June meeting. So in order to work promptly, we should be ready to talk about the density question at our meeting on the 4th.
Right. And the hope is that we do get some, specifics from them. I mean, that's really, really important. I did have one other item, irrespective of that road going in or not and the density issue, I would really like to see this is just me personally, I'm not a voting member, but, as your administrator, I would love to see, or like to see that density bonus scheme be attached to whatever we do. So with that in mind, you're going to want to have a cap of how many extra units you want to get up, if you're going to want to do. Let's say we do 72, they open it up to 72. What do we push it to 100? Do we push it to 90? Do we push it to 80? With those extra units based on the bonus structure that we're talking about. So that's just something to think about. I mean, we did that with the bonuses here at 45, we pushed it up to close to 60.
Or
but
do
that-
we push it up to 24 per unit
Right.
with the bonus structure?
Right.
We talked about that a little bit. We pushed it up to the base density being increased to 20
Right.
by
I just-
means of the density bonus. Do we want to say, well, we would prefer to use the density bonus scheme to push it up to 24? I know that is not going to be popular with buttermilk, but you know,
Is that really only relevant to the universal access and parking conditions because of the reason that we talked about during the select board meeting, that once we get above a certain size, we run into the statewide affordable component requirements?
Then it becomes an affordable housing development.
Right. Well, then there's I forget, you had it right off the top of your head, Virginia, but I forget what the percentage is that kicks
it's
in.
20%, but you know, they could understand that. In other words, if we're giving them a choice of density bonuses, they would just have to take less affordable housing density bonuses than would push them over into the next, into that other category. If you see what I mean.
No, say that again.
So they can mix and match with the density bonuses as we have it set up, right?
Right.
So they would just have to understand that they can't take so many density bonuses from the affordable housing category that would push them over into the affordable housing development category. In other
Right,
words,
but-
and they're never
any
going to
of
make
those-
more than 20% of their units be affordable. I mean,
Right. But any of those density bonuses could push them over into the affordable housing category, not just the affordable housing density bonus, right?
no, I think it's only affordable housing. That's only about affordable housing.
Right, but it's tied to the total size of the development. So whether they get there because they added parking or because they made universal units, once they hit that limit, they have to comply with the affordable housing requirement, don't they?
No, they only have to comply with the affordable housing requirement if they have more than 20% of their units as affordable. So let's say they got all of their density bonus from extra parking, from public parking. That doesn't push them over into the category. They don't have any affordable housing because they got all of their extra units from parking.
Okay, I need to reread the thing. I've confused myself, I think.
Well, we gave them this choice of having what different kinds of units. If we made our whole residential density bonus program about affordable units, then that might be an issue. But it's not. You can select other things. Some of them could be senior or adaptable, and others could be parking, and some could be affordable if they went under that limit. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Question?
Ian?
That threshold, is that strictly based on a percentage of total units, or is there like a number of units component to that also? Like if you have a 5-unit building and one of them is affordable?
Yeah, there's a lower limit, which is 5 units. So 20% or 5.
Okay.
So there is a number component to it.
Oh, five affordable units.
Five
If you had
afford-
if you had 100 units total and 20 of them were affordable, that would be a affordable housing development.
Right.
And would apply for grants, and you'd be eligible for all sorts of good stuff.
And if you had 20 units and you had 5.
That's the minimum.
Yeah. And if
be-
you have 10 units with one affordable,
Because you're not.
that's not in there either,
No,
because you
I'm
don't
not
have at
taking that.
least 5. You have to have at least 5.
That's fine. Thanks.
The other thing that I think, so the other thing that comes into play is the tier 1B thing, but if they have more than 50 units total, then they're not tier 1B doesn't cover them. So if we give them enough units to make them go over 50 units, which they will want, then I don't know why they were so fixated on tier 1B. At 31 units, tier 1B, they would fall into that category. It's still not clear to me whether the total number of units is just in that one building in the new part of the development. Building 1 is under Act 250 already, so, but is it the whole project? So that's something that we kind of have to suss out if we're going to have the Jolina court situation be part of our deliberations about tier 1B. It may just not apply if they have that many more units, so.
Yep.
We're gonna look into that.
So is our motivation to keep the bonus units in there because it's going to apply to other properties in town? Because I don't know, I got the feeling that these guys are not going to use that at all.
I would agree.
Probably not.
What they say they're going to do at this point should not be
Yeah,
a consideration.
Yeah, that's
That's
Yeah,
true.
the property could be sold and you just don't know. That's true.
okay.
Yeah, but they've never been interested in any density bonuses of anything.
They,
No.
they want to have minimum
From the get-go.
regulation, which is to be expected. I think that's going to be their consistent opinion, until the process is over. That's what I'd do if I was them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they appear to have the persuasive argument for the select board. So what they say is going to persuade the select board.
I think the select board was persuaded by the arguments related to building 1. I don't agree with what you're saying as it relates to building 2.
Yeah, well, we'll find out anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Find
clear.
out.
That's for sure.
Futile to speculate.
Yeah, I kind of
They
feel
keep being
like, I'm sorry.
If they don't need to build until 27.
Well, what they said was they have so much to do before they can even possibly build. They have to get it financed, which Josie said to me is a pipe dream. But anyway,
She said that to me too. Under the current, interest rates and everything else, that she said they can't do it. So
yeah. So it may be that it's all moot. But anyway, certainly not before 2027. Allison, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you. Has there been any flooding of that area in these recent months? Because we've had an awful lot of flooding in Richmond. It's even gotten up here to my house. Has there been flooding down there?
Flooding.
Flooding in the area where they plan to build?
Yes.
No.
Okay, just asking.
There definitely has been flooding in the area that they're not allowed to build in because it's a floodplain. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important point because flooding does a lot of damage. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's insidious.
Yeah, and that's why the whole lower part of their property, should remain open as floodplain
Right. Okay.
for flood storage water. Okay.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that that is clear, that question is cleared up, and also that in trying to permit that and get people interested in it, they need to have some kind of feeling that they're not in too much danger of being flooded.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, you don't want to put your money into something and have it all flooded.
Right.
Yeah, they're well out of the floodplain there where they're allowed to develop. I mean, there's a lot of ledge there also. I mean, there's you
Okay.
can see where the river used to run. you know.
Yes. Okay. I'm just double checking.
Yep.
Having spent hours and nights
hear ya.
in my basement emptying water
Right.
out.
Yeah, you have some particular problem up there with your streams.
Yeah. we do.
Okay, so is that sort of clear for everybody what we are intending to have at the next meeting that we hope to get quickly approved to send back to the select board is 512 revisions that say something like you can build in the back part of your building.
Mhm.
So something that is appropriate for that zoning district. So that will be the only thing that will change. If they approve it at that June 2nd meeting, there will be 21 days, then it will go into effect. Then Buttermilk would have to go to the DRB to have their master development plan changed and their approval for building one. And they would have to see if they need an amendment to their Act 250 permit, which they may or may not need. You know, the Act 250 board may decide that this is too minor or something and they don't need an amendment. But that building is still under their Act 250 permit, even with interim 1B. So that would be, you know, a few more months, but in a few months, they would be able to, if they could afford it, put those units on, you know, into that building, some number of units. Ian.
I've been thinking like being a witness to that. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
A hearing last night, I was, it seems like the select board is being kind of reactive and sort of responding to what I'm starting to view as a hysteria over housing. I know it's a thing, like, and it's real and people need places to live, but I don't know that they are fully digesting the possibilities of what the negative impacts of a ton of new residents down there might mean in this rush for housing. So I'm just saying it because I think it needs to be said. And I also don't think that they're considering the political implications. Like I like they're responding to one side right now. And I don't think that the side that is, you know, not sure is really speaking up yet. And I think they're going to. It just hasn't really happened yet. So.
Well, there's certainly no question that they are reactive and they react to the people who are there and the people who are talking to them. And, you know, I mean, that has been the case with this select board anyway. I don't know, with maybe all select boards. They react to the people who come and talk to them. And that, you know, they certainly went immediately on the side of Josie and Brendan with their statements that are maybe, you know, a little biased in their own interest. So, yeah. Mark, you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry, you just cracked me up. I mean, that was a polite way of saying it.
Okay, Chris, you were muted, so we couldn't hear you.
I see. I think that the select board, in my experience, always looks for opportunities to act where they see there being broad agreement. And building one, I think, was at that point where I don't think they're getting any complaints about that concept, you know, particularly if the storefront is retained. Nobody, I think, has any idea what goes on behind the, you know, the storefront. The storefront is what people see. I think, and I'm basing this, you know, on informal conversations I've had, is that they are hearing from people who, you know, as Virginia said during the meeting, don't want anything to change downtown. You know, that's a very strong, consistent voice, but it was not at the meeting last night. I agree. So, but I would be, I mean, when we heard that, I forget which member of the select board said that, but I think maybe it was Bard, you know, made the point that that's something that he hears regularly as well. So I think once the there's something formal that the select, you know, the select board is well, I think that started with the meeting last night. You know, I think there will be discussions around town about what that means, and there are people who, you know, still would like any development in the in the village to have a minimum commercial component. And, I don't think that constituency has gone away.
Well, the public hearing was left open, so they certainly
Yep.
can take comment. But getting back to the first part of what we've been directed to do, I did put the first floor plan in the meeting materials on the meetings page. So if you take a look at that, you can see what it looks like.
And the other thing I want to say, and then Allison,
Okay,
in response to Chris, is, one thing that we should do is when we start talking about the density, we should advertise it more. Because I did put 2 front porch forum posts in for the select board meeting, but, maybe we should try to have more people come to our meeting so we can understand that voice a little more. It's tough when it's just out there and you can't reference it at all, but it would be nice if we had people come to talk about that. Maybe they don't come to the planning commission because they're going to wait and just come to the select board. Well, that's fine. The select board doesn't really publicize its hearings any more than the statutory requirement of posting it. So, maybe we ought to be trying to encourage just to understand that voice that we're not really hearing so much. So just a thought. Allison.
well, thank you. About the voice that we're not hearing. I was in the village yesterday doing business at the bank, and I was hearing about the number of businesses that have closed on Main Street that are across the street from where the bank is. I guess Hatchet closed down, or some of the other businesses in those buildings. I was quite shocked and surprised to hear that, but there seems to be some concern over whether there's a money-making endeavor there. I don't know if part of our problem is that so much stuff is delivered from online and that kind of thing, but that was also of concern to me. I don't know if anybody else has heard about that.
Well, Hatchet closed, but one of the stores that closed has reopened as a bookstore. So,
Oh, good.
and the
Yeah.
store next to Sweet Simone's has opened as part of Sweet Simone's. So it's not any worse than it's ever been, except that Hatchet and his other restaurant, Big Spruce, those 2 restaurants have closed. But
That's a blow.
yeah, it's a blow, but the whole block hasn't gone under.
Is there,
No, and I agree that's there's just turnover is part of life, and particularly when it comes to restaurants. Restaurants have a short shelf life often. And I haven't heard anything to suggest that things have suddenly gotten worse, except that now everybody's sort of facing an uncertain situation because of what's happening at the national level.
Right.
But
Yes.
but honestly, those 2 restaurants, for anybody who's done business with Gabe over the years, they've been struggling for a while.
At
Just
least
thought I'd mention it.
he has his 4 units above the Big Spruce to finance the building.
Yeah.
Well, I've lived in Richmond for more than half a century, and I'm very fond of Richmond. I think I love the idea that I can go out my front door and turn to the left and go into the country of Huntington, and I can turn to the right and go down into a city, or like a small urban area. And I just think it's a fabulous place to be, and I just have every good feeling about Richmond and want to see it thrive.
That's
As
good.
do we all.
Yep, we sure do. All
Do you
right,
want to look at Keith's floor plan?
sure. Do you want to share the floor plan?
I'll pull that up.
Now, one question I had about this is that this is the above grade part of the building on the first floor, but there's actually is it a partial or a full level below this that's below grade, correct?
Not that I know of.
It's,
Um,
yeah, the storage, isn't there storage
Oh, is there?
units
That's
down
right.
there?
I
Yeah,
think
I
so,
have
yeah.
I have a site visit tomorrow, actually. So it's the first time I'll be in the building.
Yeah, they have little storage cubes and their fenced areas and bike storage and stuff down there, but no residences or businesses.
Oh, I see it going down here. Okay, yeah, so there's another floor.
Yeah, so on the left where it says unit number 1, 900 square feet, that would be the piece that would be required to be to remain a commercial use.
Right.
And then the rest they could redevelop as they wished. Keith said those checkered lines are just, walls that are structural.
And
Otherwise, the walls could be moved. So there could be a few, maybe up to 5 units in there.
yeah, I'll corroborate that tomorrow, but that's typically what that means. But we'll see what they want to do.
Yeah.
So if they went ahead and did that, that would take 5 out of their remaining 31 units. So then they would be left with 26 units. But we're going to be asked to raise that. We know that.
I wonder if they could really put 5 in given where the current plumbing is. I mean, yes, they could do that, but the cost might be prohibitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
This
it's a
might be
tough
more like
retrofit.
2 or 3 bigger units.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough retrofit if they want to put in 10 units or anything like that,
Yeah.
So, but it's their money.
Yeah, so that's going to take them a while before they even get around to, I think, thinking about building 2. So,
Strikes me, this looks like an aircraft carrier.
Doesn't it?
Here's the
Yeah.
conning tower. All right. Are we good with this? You want me to stop?
everybody good with looking at it right now? It should be in the packet, right? So you can look at it further.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to have anything else to say about this?
No, other than just the thing that I think this was where we got the clearest direction from the select board. I think we've discussed it in the commission before, and correct me if I'm wrong, but do we need to spend a lot more time on this other than figuring out what specific modifications to the zoning that we need to make in order to
Not much.
allow development in the residential development in units 2 and 3?
Not really. It's
No.
a pretty easy fix.
No, we're done. I mean, if nobody has any other questions, we'll bring the language back next time, a quick approval, we'll send it on to the select board and await their next instruction. What we do want to think about is how we're going to deal with the density question, especially if they give us options, as they were suggesting at first, i.e. with or without residential density bonus is pretty open-ended language, but so anyway, but we can talk about that next time when we get the exact instructions.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on to 6. Ian is going to give us an update from our town plan steering committee, which is up and running and
Yes.
moving right along.
So, we had a meeting last week and we made a lot of progress moving towards the outreach from the town plan steering committee to the people that run the committees in town. So let me get my note up here. All right. Virginia has created a timeline of basically how we're going to run the process, which I shared in the chat. And it's, if anybody wants it, I can email it to you. It'll probably end up on the town plan webpage that's being created. Keith and Virginia, that is a separate page from our committee, right?
The Town Plan 2026 Steering Committee
Mhm.
has a
That's-
webpage.
We have that webpage, but are they gonna create a separate page? Like that with the link for the surveys, or is that gonna be on the existing?
No, the link will be on the existing one that's
Okay.
live right now, and then
Okay.
that link will be directed to some type of folder that everybody can access.
Okay, so we have the Town Plan Steering Committee webpage, which it's much like the Planning Commission webpage. It has all of the meeting information, all of the documents posted. There's also going to be a link on there where people can review the edits that are being made. There's going to be a survey that can be filled out with some general questions to kind of get a feel for who's filling out the form and what their concerns are. And also, they'll also have the ability to add their own personal comments to what we're working on and what their concerns might be. I'm pretty sure some progress has already been made on that. So that should be, I don't know, Keith, has that?
So
Do we have
that's
a
on,
date when that might be live?
Well, the website is live. I mean,
No, I'm talking about the survey.
I think that's being built as we speak.
that's on the agenda for our next meeting, Ian, to
Okay, so
finalize
that's-
the survey.
So we're a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks out, probably from.
Well, next week is our meeting and Andrew said he would have it done by then.
Okay, so but as far as for people to actually use it,
We'll see at our next meeting, but he said he'd have it done, so.
I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So,
We got a lot of things for on our next meeting's agenda that we're
Yeah.
gonna finalize, so.
okay, all right. Yeah, and I'm just gonna give everyone here a little, just at the end of this, just so they can see everything that needs to be done. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so Virginia and Chelsea have produced, letters that are gonna be sent out to, committee chairs and stakeholders. They're waiting for me and Andrew to provide them with the contact information, and, we're working on that. Hopefully we'll have the ability to send those letters out to people this week. Those are the folks that are gonna be evaluating and updating, the previous sections and, updating the goals and action items that are associated with those, with our guidance. Sorry.
Is that Cooper?
Someone else's dog got him. Give me one. Hey. Hush.
Puppies.
Sorry, there's nothing I can do about it.
It's highly entertaining.
All right, I'll try to keep going.
Yep.
I'll slow it down. Andrew, Chelsea, and Jason Osterman have been reviewing the opening language of each of the sections in an effort to condense and simplify the language. You know what? I got to put him in a kennel. It's going to take me a minute.
Okay. Do you want me to mention a few things while you're away?
Yeah, please.
Okay, yep. So we have formed a timeline for the whole proposal. The charrette date has been set. It's
July 10th and 12th.
the July 10th and 12th. We're going to have a table at the 4th of July. We're going to have farmers market tables in July and August. We have all signed up to write front porch forum pieces. All of the members of the steering committee are going to individually submit a front porch forum post on a weekly basis on the different sections. The banner is going to be, we'll finalize the decision about that next time, but it's probably going to be the same banner, but re-updated with the new webpage and stuff. I don't know, whatever you think, Ian. Wow, that puppy's bigger than he was before. So yeah, the charrette, the farmer's market, the outreach is going well. We're going to try to have a rough draft in June, by the end of June, presented at the 4th of July, probably at our table. We're going to have a flyer that is going to be able to be handed out. What else, Ian? I don't know.
I know that's pretty much everything I had.
That should be
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to also add, I mean, I was looking at the documents that were provided by the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, and it's just, it's amazing all of the things that like we are required to include in this thing. And like, and along with all of the mandates from the state, it's really just incredibly bureaucratic, it seems like to me.
Yeah,
You have to do it.
it does.
Quite
But it's a
bureaucratic.
lot, it's a lot to pull together.
Yeah, including some things that are unclear what exactly they mean, like you have to have meaningful outreach to the underserved communities. You have to have an exact plan, you know, specific plan for how you're going to create more low and moderate income housing. I mean, you know, that's going to be challenging to
There's
write.
a lot about like environmental justice too, which
Yep.
I don't
Environmental
fully
justice.
I don't even fully understand what that means.
Right, you're supposed to distribute the benefits and harms from injury to the environment equally among all the different populations. That is hard to understand exactly what that means and how you're going to do it. So anyway, we just do the best we can. And I think that regional planning also is trying to do the best it can with its new mandate. So they're going to take this document, and if we say, well, our first step is to find out what our, you know, our underserved communities are, who they are, we're going to find that out. That's our plan.
Okay.
That's the first step, right? To knowing what you're going to do. So anyway, but it's all under control. Our public members seem to be really gung-ho and dynamic, wouldn't you say, Ian?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. And
plunging ahead.
on my own front, you know, I've been trying to put together the contact information, and I've been amazed at how little is readily available, like from the town. I was in touch with Suzanne Parent this week, and she has like a binder that was left over from Linda, and it just had physical addresses for people. There's no email addresses for most of the people. So
Have you tried Duncan?
I'm gonna go down tomorrow or the next day and just
Yeah.
go door to door and get everything that I need. But so yeah, that's kind of something that I've been kind of working on, and I've got a few interviews set up with some of the people in the business community to start working on some of the economic things that are implicated with business, basically. So
Great. And when we finalize that flyer that Jason is working on, you can take that and go with it, you know, use it.
Yeah, I'm kind of
engage
waiting until I was waiting until after our
business
next.
community.
So yeah, that's kind of what's going on. Sorry for the shotgun approach and the dog.
Good, all good.
All right, any questions about that? It seems to be cruising right along.
Yep.
Very short timeline, because, you know, we got to have it done really by December so it can get onto the warning and all that for town meeting in March. So it's now or never.
You have a song, I believe, Now or Never.
Yes,
Perry Como or something like that.
from a long time ago.
55.
All right, so if there's no other discussion about that, we'll go on to our next item, which is to try to finish up the village commercial district to bring it in line with Act 47, and we need to do it anyway. The number A under Introduction to Work on the Village Commercial Zoning District, that question has to do with residential uses in the commercial district. So the village commercial district is Railroad Street, basically. And Dan Noyes owns the grocery store, the lumber store, the lumber yard, and Railroad Street.
Literally.
So he is a stakeholder, you might say, in this district. And he has expressed that he doesn't want residential uses to be allowed, which they are not now, except they are allowed as a mixed use PUD in his district. So they actually are allowed. And there are residences there already.
Many.
So my feeling is that we need to talk to him, that we need to maybe have him come in if we can get him to come to a meeting and we can discuss this, or maybe we just need to reach out to him. You know, maybe I just need to go and talk to him, or somebody needs to go and talk to him about this question about residential uses. The other issue is, well, one of the other issues is whether to try to bring the Round Church Corners complex, you know, where Man and Machine and the Stone Corral is. That little tiny island is a commercial district, but it is not part of the Village Commercial District. It is part of the Commercial District, along with the area near the Lucky Spot, the little tiny area in Jonesville that's entirely in the floodplain, and the VYCC property. Those four pieces of randomly not related parcels are in what's called the Commercial District. So my feeling is that the Round Church commercial piece, Round Church Corners complex commercial piece, is more belonging with the Railroad Street piece, because we are trying to bring that Village Neighborhoods Residential District South, the walkable pieces, into the village, you know, as part of the village. Heidi Borman, who runs the Round Church Corners complex, she does not own all the buildings. She owns the Stone Corral and Man and Machine, but she is also opposed to having residential uses in that district. Right now, there aren't any residences in there. It's not very big, but it could go up, especially if we're contemplating height extension for Jolina Court or any other places. If height is possible to be extended, and those buildings, only a couple of them have an upstairs anyway that are right now offices or vacant. You know, a third story would even fit within our 35 feet. Could be apartments, which is a traditional village look with the businesses on the ground floor, residences above. So if we want to combine those into a single district, then we probably also need to talk to those folks down there. There are I think four owners of the block of buildings there. So anyway, what do people think about all that? Do you want to try to talk to them? Do you want to try to start with thinking about the stakeholders, or? The Act 47 piece is that if you allow residential uses, then you have to abide by Act 47 and Act 181. You have to allow the 5 units per acre residential density. You have to allow the 3- and 4-story building and duplexes, any place you could put a single family home. Given there aren't many places you could put a single family home. And the only kind of residences that you're probably going to have in those two districts would be upstairs, and they would be apartments, or they might be condos, perhaps. Ian.
Do we know why they don't want residential? Have they expressed?
The only things that Heidi and Dan have mentioned to me is that they think that it interferes with business. You know, that like if there are trucks and stuff moving around, delivery trucks, they, you know, and children are riding their bikes, then there might be conflicts between businesses and residences. Whether there are any right now with the several residences that are on Railroad Street, whether there actually are any conflicts. I don't know. I mean, I'd like to find that out. But, you know, conflicting uses. Just like farms often don't want to have residences near them because they think there's going to be conflicts. Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good example of some of that want to keep things exactly the way they are constituency, actually, because there's sort of an inherent contradiction, right? These areas have residences in them, and the businesses and the residences have learned to live together by and large, at least as far as I'm aware. And the concern is that if something changes, that balance will be upset in some way. At least that's what I've heard from Heidi. I haven't talked to Dan about it, but I would imagine that's sort of where he's coming from too. What's interesting to me is that they don't tend to see this as a potential future opportunity for them as business owners develop residential property, which I would have thought they might, but they don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do you think it's worth trying to engage them more, Chris, or what do you think how do you think we should proceed here?
I mean, I think it's always good to talk to people in the affected districts, particularly business owners. And I think the thing, though I'm sure both Heidi and Dan understand this, but sometimes people don't, is that this isn't anything that anybody would be forced to do. Nobody's going to be forced to change their current business or create residential units if they don't want to. But I think it probably never hurts to stress that.
The other slight issue about the PUD section 512 is that it is contradictory in terms of whether a residential PUD is allowed in the village commercial district. In one portion of 512, it says you can put a residential PUD, and in another place, it says 50% of the area in a PUD in that district has to be commercial. So we need to fix that. We're going to have to fix that. We're going to have to decide you can or you can't have a residential PUD because it's ambiguous at this point. Ian.
Are we going into this with the assumption that we want this to be allowed as the planning commission, or are we just kind of unbiased about the whole thing?
How about you? What is your feeling about it? You are the planning commission. What's your feeling?
I haven't thought about it that deeply, except I think it's important to get. I think it is important to get input from Dan and Heidi for sure,
And Connor, obviously.
so that we fully understand what their concerns are.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where there are pros and cons. You might feel, well, we need to preserve these areas for commerce. You know, that was part of the motivation for trying to keep the ground floor of building number 1 was we need to have a walkable downtown. You have to have things to walk to in the downtown. Businesses are good, you know, let's keep it for businesses. On the other hand, you know, we have this residential problem. Could you put residences upstairs? Why not? You know, and wouldn't they like that? You know, I'm feel like Chris does on this, that it might be an opportunity for Dan Noyes when his son takes over the business. Maybe he's going to want to be able to have more options and be able to put apartments upstairs. The other people we should talk to are Slopeside. That's Roger Brown, who's got the properties at the end of Railroad Street. And he doesn't seem to have any known plans right now, but he might have an opinion about whether he would like to have residences. I mean, I kind of like the idea of having businesses with residences over them. It's sort of a villagey thing. But
I do too.
Yeah. You know how I kind of think about this sometimes is that what we're trying to do is manage inevitable change in a way. I mean, I think that sort of what we've gone through with buttermilk is kind of a good example of people had a vision of what they wanted to happen with that site, and we found a developer who was willing to work within that vision, and it hasn't worked out as planned. And it's in nobody's interest in the long term for there to be vacant, unused properties. Those are not productive. And and that eventually will lead to something like we had with that was an earlier time, but that's that kind of change that couldn't be accommodated, led to the abandonment of the creamery plant. So what we want is for the business owners to be able to adapt their properties to the economic realities that they face, and ideally still preserve the things that we want to see in the town. The thing that I worry about is Richmond becoming a bedroom community, without businesses,
Yes.
without that we all appreciate and enjoy. I'm not exactly sure what we do about it as the cost of the housing that's in Richmond becomes more and more expensive and just dominates the value for the use of land. We heard Brendan talk about it at the select board meeting. It's just so much more profitable to put housing on any plot of land in Richmond opposed to any other end use right now. And that is probably not going to change for the foreseeable future. And we can put requirements in, but if the end result of that is that we end up with vacant storefronts, that's not a good outcome either.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is going to be the challenge of the economic development section of the town plan is, and we don't really have a set of people who are writing that, who are working on that. Well, Ian's going to work on it.
Well,
how to promote economic development
God
in the
help
town.
Richmond if I am writing that.
to keep it a vibrant and dynamic village. I mean, like Allison says, that's what we all want, a vibrant and dynamic downtown village where you have things you can go and you can buy and you can eat and stuff like that. It's a little bit beyond our control. And we're just kind of trying to work out the best balance. So anyway.
can I say something else?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point, Virginia. I think Richmond geographically is in a very interesting opportunist location because we are, as I mentioned before, you go in one direction and you hit the country, and you go in the other direction and you hit more of a metropolis kind of atmosphere. It seems to me like this idea of people having homes and businesses together sort of thing, because I've done that for years with my swimming and all that, but I mean it's the kind of thing that it's pretty unique actually. There's not much of that left, and I think that's an area where we could become more prosperous as a community by capitalizing on that geographic locality and just this concept that it's not found everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought.
Yeah, how to do
It
that.
just popped in my brain, just a thought.
Question, right?
Yeah, no, I think so.
So should
Yeah.
we try to have these folks come to the meeting, or how do we want to
Well,
proceed?
I think we want to hear from as many people who'd like to participate. I mean, what if we sent out I mean, this is just, I'm just thinking of this off the cuff here. I'm not really thinking it out, but what if we sent out a questionnaire of what do you love about Richmond? Why do you live here? What would you like to see that's different? I've got some really good friends that I'm very fond of, who are very disillusioned over in the Essex area right now because
Mhm.
they've had these residential homes in nice kind of like suburb type areas, and the big businesses, the big box stores, the big this and the big that are taking over all kinds of places over there, and the kind of smaller town, more intimate, personal kinds of things that are happening in the small towns are getting overrun, and this is an opportunity for Richmond to capitalize on that kind of atmosphere rather than letting just the typical lots of trucks. You know, I just had an experience across the road with Bird's Eye Building. Um, and of course, that started out as a barn, but the person who owns that now, they've actually retreated from such a huge industry that like smack in this residential area. They've taken the larger part of the industry to a different community where it's more suitable there, and they've made this smaller. And there's this really nice little lumber yard, and I really appreciate what they've done to improve that, uh, as a matter of fact. But I just think that there's some kind of a this is a concept. I'd like to know what some of these other people on the board think about it. But this concept of the combination of small businesses, or somewhat business, somewhat residential, um, that has kind of gotten lost, especially in this day and age where there is so much stuff that's delivered by mail order, and this stuff. We have an opportunity to attract people, I think, to this. Well, I don't want to call it old-fashioned way of doing things, but a way of doing things that many people have really liked. Just a
Yeah,
thought.
well, that's the challenge, I think, is to figure out how to attract people and how to make it work. That businesses have to make a business. So,
Yeah, you've got to survive. That's true.
yep. Mark.
Yes. Yeah, just following up on a couple things. The commercial property, we sort of drifted away from that without closing the loop on it, but I don't think we're going to end up spending a lot of time on that, because from the sounds of it, the major stakeholders aren't interested in changing what they have. But if we wanted to put that firmly behind us, we could reach out to those people and ask them to come in very briefly and make sure we're up to speed and that we're understanding where it is they're at. Well, we could hypothesize about second story residential all day long, but if they're not into it, why are we going to waste our time? I'm in favor of inviting them to a meeting, probably, I don't know if you can get it in post July. And I don't think it's going to take too long. Probably won't take up the whole meeting, but come in, find out exactly where they're at. And while we're at it, check with the stakeholders in Jonesville and the interstate intersection area there. Have them come in, make sure that we're doing what we want, because there's no sense even talking about it if they're happy with the status quo. So that might not change for 10 or 20 years. And so let's just get it over with very quickly.
Yeah.
Right.
Then
Well, we
maybe
could,
on to the AR district. Start tackling that, start looking into 4 units allowed space, those types of things that will increase density. I've always sort of been afraid of that myself, but I think there's pressure, and there may be districts that are closer to the town where that would be more beneficial, just right on the fringes, where we could subdivide the AR and promote more residential, even if it's not on town water and sewer. I'm sure that there's plenty of places where you could put in a 4-unit. That would be close to town,
Mm-hmm.
be quasi walkable, that kind of thing. So I'd like to focus on maybe tackling the AR. The other thing is kind of bounced off of this a while ago was height restrictions, and I think it makes sense for us to zone that physical structure to allow heights over 35. If they have sufficient alternative fire suppression systems, I don't know if it's going to work for a 45-unit house out in the boonies with low water pressure, but something in the town, this property that the house that the building that they could end up putting in Jolina Court, 4 stories. I think it's onerous, but I mean, that would be the place to start rather than allowing it anywhere else. And setting up our zoning to facilitate that, I think would be good, sort of in preparation for the other stuff. But we could just put that on the docket, hash it out. I think it'd be a fairly straightforward conversation, and then adopt it and move on. And just one last point about the creamery parcel and bringing that around. And one of my biggest concerns since the get-go has been the traffic. It's less the culture, it's less the other things. Those aren't an impact. It's the traffic. So if there's a way to get those FEMA buyout properties and allow passage through that to facilitate traffic, and then just have the traffic come out of the Jolina Court Road now and not have to go in, so we don't have those left-hand turns at the railroad crossing. Yeah. That's a game changer as far as density, but I think we need to find out a little bit more about that, what it would take to do that. I certainly don't want the town to buy it and build the road for them and have them then reap all the benefits from that. But if there's a way that we can transfer ownership or at least the responsibility of the infrastructure to them to do it, and then they get 60 units hassle-free, you would think that that would be a benefit for them. Of course, they don't want to spend any money on anything. No business does. But if that's the option between 45 units and 65 units without the hazards, I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, well, Keith is going to look into whether, there are a bunch of questions about that, like who owns the land that is the buyouts properties? Who owns that? Does FEMA own it? I mean, there's some opinions.
It's the town.
Well,
that's what happened
that's
with Mary Hoole's property.
that was a question that
Property, that 1 acre. We just
Right.
decided not to do anything about it because the neighbors really don't want anything on there. I mean, it would be a great spot for a dog park, honestly, but
Right.
the neighbors have so much pushback to it that we haven't enabled that. But it is town property. We own that 1.1 acres or whatever it is.
Right.
on Cochrane
So
Road.
the question is now, currently, so that was a while back that happened, a couple of years, right? At least a few years back.
Oh, geez, yeah. The
So
whole
the question is, is that still the case? We have received some other opinions about whether that is still the case, that the town would then actually own that property. And there's also the question of whether we would be allowed to put any impervious surfaces on it, like pavement. Or whether it would have to be gravel. I don't know, Keith, if you want to talk more about that, but we're definitely going to find out more information.
Yeah, we're definitely digging into it with Lynn, who is taking care of the buyout aspects of it. My research today did indicate that the deed does get transferred to the town. So I believe it would be town property. I would go out on a limb and say 98% it would be town property. So with that said, now the thing is that comes with, stipulations. One of them being you can't have hard surfaces. It needs to be open. It can't be developed. But what does that mean? So, I mean, devil's in the details, and that's what we're looking at right now.
I'd be surprised if they prevented any impervious surfaces, but yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing about that. That would be more direction than spending a lot of time spinning our wheels on commercial properties that nobody wants to change.
Yeah, and then, the other option is, to take it through the town center, but that is not a popular option at all. So I know at the very least we could probably have a crash gate there for emergencies, but that'd probably be about it. So.
Yep, so more to come on that topic.
Stay tuned.
I mean, FEMA is putting the money up to buy those houses, so they're going to have something to say about the property. We just don't know what exactly. Ian.
If some deal is struck with buttermilk, like you get your density if you build that road kind of thing, who manages that? Like, is that a select board decision or is that something we do?
Probably the select board, I would think.
Yeah, I would also. Yeah, I mean, if it's town land, it definitely would be. Those parcels do abut buttermilk property. So, it's not like we have to have a right of way or anything, but, over other lands. But, it's a DRB issue. That's, that remains to be seen. It's so premature at this point.
I'm curious.
But we know that it would work. It just, the machinations of it, if we could do it, would be great. It really would.
Well, I mean, that's a question that I have. Would it be great? Because part of it does go through Jolina Court's property. The upper part would go through Jolina Court's property, which is now a neighborhood that we have created with all these units. So, I mean,
I would like to say if it's a one-way out and not in, I don't know how it works. I mean, we'd have to run through it. There's just so many different scenarios that could happen. But the first one is, can it be done? That's
right.
really it.
Okay, so we'll talk about that later. So, so Mark, you sound like you really don't want to work on the village commercial district. Would you would?
I would be willing to work on the village commercial district if the village commercial district wanted work done. But it doesn't sound like they do. So let's
that's the question,
working on it or even discussing it. Let's get the stakeholders in here and find out, because we're not going to be able to force something down their throats.
Right.
Something that they don't want done. So why waste time on it?
Yeah, well, we need to find out, because these are just casual conversations that we've had over the years. I've had with Dan as I go into the hardware store to buy something, and, I say, what do you think about residential? But it needs to be a little more formalized, I think, a conversation, and to really understand, and to know that they understand what it means, like it takes away your opportunity to have upstairs apartments.
And the other thing about that,
maybe it might be a PUD, but anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I spoke over you. I apologize. That PUD you're talking about, I thought that was specifically a mixed use PUD allowed in the commercial rather than an all out residential PUD.
Well, except the one part of the section B, I think, says residential PUDs are allowed in the following districts, and the commercial district has always been one of those that has been listed. But then in the next section, section G, I think, it says a mixed use PUD is what is allowed. So,
We should fix that. That's as soon as we meet with the commercial folks and they propose that they don't want residential, we should line item that sentence out so that it goes away and eliminates any confusion. I imagine there's some other stuff that we could clean up in the zoning to help organize things, you know. I think the height restriction would be another one that would be worthy of focusing some time on. Fixing that language you called out, Virginia, would be worthy of the commission's time to clarify and eliminate confusion on.
right. Yeah. 5.12.2 section A says a PUD or residential PUD may be permitted in the VRC, the Gateway RC, the VC, the C, or the IC districts. So that seems to indicate that a residential PUD is okay, but then you go over to that other section, which we're changing for Jolina Court, and it says mixed use or commercial, because you have to have at least 50% commercial.
I don't think I recall that ever being the intention of any PC board I was on, that it would be a purely residential. So I think, you know, we must have missed that in the fine print and the rereads. I don't know, but
Right. And we didn't fix it when we looked at the PUD section for the master development plan language. We didn't fix that. And
Oh, we noticed it. We did notice it though, then.
we did notice it. One of the problems is that it's unclear by our language whether a residential PUD is a type of PUD or whether there are two different things, a PUD and a residential PUD. We need to fix that because we talk about them sometimes as a residential PUD being just a type of PUD, in which case all PUD, you know, parameters would apply. Or some cases we talk about it there being two different things. So we need to figure that out.
that at the next meeting. You know, that's something that would be a good conversation to have some clarification on and then resolve. I guess maybe not the next meeting, but we by and at the time of the commercial district stakeholders conversation, we should have that done. And if they say no, then we should make sure they understand that they're at risk of that with our current zoning, and maybe then they would press us to fix it the way it should have been fixed.
Right. I mean, yeah, I guess I think we should talk to the stakeholders first, because if they definitely don't want residential, then we can fix it one way. If they would like to have residential, then we'll fix it the other way. So anyway.
Yes.
All right. So we've got half an hour. So we'll try to arrange for those stakeholders to come in maybe and talk to us at some point.
Ideally not June 18th.
June 18th, I don't think we can have a meeting on June 18th.
Or July 2nd. I would like to be there for that conversation.
Or July 2nd. Okay,
Oh,
you
I
can't be
won't-
there on the 2nd either.
But I'll be here on the 16th.
Is anybody else not going to be here on July 2nd?
I can make myself unavailable if it will help everyone else.
Thank you.
You're unavailable on the 18th though, right, of June?
Yeah.
So you, Mark, Chris, and I are all unavailable on the June 18th. So either we have to reschedule it for a different date or just cancel it.
Not in June.
What do you people want to do? Do you want to just cancel it and just have one meeting in the month of June and go straight to July? Then we really should have a July 2nd meeting if we just cancel the 18th, which would be my feeling we should do. Summer, it's tough. A lot going on in the summer. And Allison, you're going to have the pool starting soon, so
Yes, I have that in the summer, but if we're meeting in the evening, the pool is usually not open in the evening.
Right, but it's a question of whether, if it ends at 6:30, you're going to be able to come to a meeting at 7 o'clock. You can eat dinner at the meeting, but anyway, you're just going to have to
Well-
keep us informed as to whether you're able to come or not.
I'll do my best. Yeah,
But we still have
yeah,
Brayden and Rebecca. I mean, we're at full staff with 7. We can live without Allison for the first half hour on those events. Then
Thank you, Mark.
I don't know if we can live
I
without
understand
You can
Allison.
live without
last year
Allison.
when we
too.
were down to 4 people
Right.
or
Yeah.
5 people, when you were late, we had to wait to open even the meeting until you
You
were able to wrap up your work and get to here. I know what it's like. I work late myself. I'm not calling you out, Allison, at all. I'm sympathizing 100%.
No, I didn't take it that way, Mark. That's fine. No, that's true. I mean, I run the pool business in the summer, and it's the rest of the year I don't run it, but I have to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the
Make
better,
swimmers while the
is there
water's flowing.
anything you can do about this weather? The sun is not shining. It's wet around it. And there's water everywhere. I don't have to go to the pool to find pool. It's out in my yard.
It's gonna be 80 in the 80s next week, high 70s and 80s
Oh,
next
Oh,
week.
good.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Great.
Lots of sunshine. Yeah.
I did talk to Rebecca. I had a conversation with her because I wanted to know if she really was going to come back or not, or she should resign. And she really wants to come back. She says she will be able to come back in June. So probably the meeting of the 18th, which we're canceling. But anyway,
How's
her
her
son had a bad-
situation there? Is she doing okay?
yes, her son, who is 15, had a bad skiing accident. He had spinal injuries and was paralyzed for a while. He's now
That's awful.
just gone back to school with a walker and braces, and
Oh, that's
is
terrible.
moving around and not paralyzed. And the thing he wants to do is to ski more. So, he's 15, so that's good, I guess. Anyway, so she feels that in the summer, he will be far enough along that she will be able to come back and devote time to this, and she says she really wants to. So
Yeah.
we're
Well,
hanging in there
swimming
with her for now.
Pardon me, but swimming would be very good therapy for somebody with those problems.
Okay. Yeah, you should get in touch with her. I'll give you her email, or maybe I'll let her know that you're thinking
Well,
of
that's
that.
true. I think that's another aspect of the water is it can be very healing for a number of things.
Yep. Okay, so just a couple more quick things. If we try to work through the commercial district, we have to talk a little bit more about the floodplain and look at the map to see where the floodplain is. This issue came up with Richmond Rescue, where the floodplain is exactly. And I'm hoping that we can get some idea of when the new maps are going to be ready, and if they have significantly increased the borders of the
Yeah, I would think
floodplain.
so. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to be in a timely fashion or not, but it may be something that has relevance in that area. So more on that later, but people can just think about it and maybe start looking at the maps. When we really dig into it, we'll have to have those maps out there. So, and discuss the outreach to the stakeholders we already talked about as maybe being the first step with this process. So that's all I have on that. I guess we can see when the stakeholders might be able to be available. So, all right, any more questions on that or discussion? Moving on to 8, other business and updates. So Keith has some news from the Planning and Zoning Office that he could share with us.
What's that? What are you talking about? You talking about Tyler?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tyler, starting the 15th of this month, I will be your zoning administrator. I'm taking those duties over on top of my planning duties. So my glass will be totally full. There's no doubt about that. We're going to be posting the job hopefully on Friday. If not, it'll be early next week. And that's kind of the big news. So his last day is the 14th. He'll do the last DRB meetings. So there's going to be a lot of conflict issues for me because all the committees that I serve have meetings on Wednesdays now, the DRB, the Planning Commission, the Steering Committee. I do not attend the Housing Committee anymore. I don't have the bandwidth for that. But now I have to absorb the DRB. So we'll figure that out. It's going to be catch as catch can for the next at least 2 months. So 3 months maybe, because I'll have to train somebody also. So that's the big news out of planning and zoning.
Good luck.
Tyler is going to Morrisville. And is he going to be a zoning administrator, do you know, Keith, or?
Yeah, he's the planning and zoning administrator for the town. And the town is, it's about a 5,200 population, with Morrisville as the center. So he's gonna have his hands full there, that's for sure. It's a great opportunity for him. I mean, it really is. He's extending his career now. It's a great pay jump, and he'll do just fine. He'll do just fine. So sorry to lose him. It's nice to be able to mold somebody in the way you want to mold somebody instead of it having been foisted upon you. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to the next 3 months. I'm not. It's a job. It's all fine. I mean, I'm not concerned about it. I'm just going to be crushed. So
Yeah, right.
that's all.
Yeah, so,
That's great news.
yeah. And so we can look for a little less time from Keith for this work, because he's also gonna do all the backup for the steering committee for the town
So
plan.
there's your silver lining, folks. There's your silver lining. Less time with Kate.
So we can continue to slope along. All right. The other thing that we need to be thinking about is the Tier 1B question, which we haven't really resolved. If we do nothing, then we will not opt in, and that's what regional planning will do.
It's a select board's decision.
It's the select board's decision. If we don't have a recommendation, the housing committee is probably going to recommend that we opt in.
I thought we recommended that we don't opt in.
Well,
We have a vote on that? We just sort
we
of let-
didn't vote on it, but we sort of had an agreement that we kind of didn't really feel like we had the capability to do a good job with that on those kind of developments.
Maybe we could formalize that, and that might help present our opinion to the select board a little more clearly.
So anyway, if we did mock up a letter for that, we didn't bring it tonight, but we can do it next time.
Good.
Stating that we do not recommend they opt in. There are going to be some pressures on them to opt in. The Jolina Court folks started that discussion at the select board meeting, but it seems to me, on thinking about it, if we increase the density so that they have more than 50 units, they're not going to be eligible to be included in Tier 1B. We did find out that Chelsea Brooks on the Housing Committee and I looked into the question of whether, if you opted in, you could opt into a very specific area. So you could totally limit the area that you're opting into with an overlay district. So questions about whether it might open up outlying areas that we would want Act 250 to be involved in, that may not be the case. It may be if we just have it on a very specific, like, the downtown district. And we still think it's gonna be kind of moot because there aren't that many properties that are big enough in this area, especially if Jolina Court is too big, then, So if we still feel like we want to recommend that we do not opt in, then we'll bring out that letter that we can then look at.
Yeah, if we could include that in the next meeting, that'd be great.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about that, about the opting in question. And also reviewing the future land use map. We haven't really gotten around to doing that. We're not going to do that tonight, but at some point we should put the map up and look at it and see if the areas in general correspond with our map in our town plan. Our future land use map is a fuzzy map. You remember that, Mark? The fuzzy map we had with the no boundaries. You know, there were no property lines because we really didn't want to scare people to think that we were talking about their property. They're just these blobs of color, which probably aligns with most other kinds of maps because it's so blobby. But anyway, it would be a good exercise to put them both up together. Our future land use map from our town plan, CCRPC's future land use map, and see if they are adequately aligning. So I'm going to put that on the agenda sometime, maybe for our next meeting. All right, that's all I have. Anybody else have anything else they want to talk about? Keith, you have anything?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well,
Just go Knicks. Just go Knicks. That's all I got to say.
all right. Well, that's all then. We could entertain a motion to adjourn if someone would like to make that.
So moved.
Motion by Chris to adjourn. Any second to that?
A second.
Ian seconded it. Okay. If there's no objection from anyone to adjourning, we will adjourn at 8:45. I hear no objection, so, Keith,
No,
are you
I'm
saying goodbye or are you objecting? Oh,
I'm
that's a
leaving
goodbye.
goodbye.
All right, bye, all,
Right.
thanks. Hope we see you next time.
Thank you, Virginia, for all your
You're
work.
welcome. Thank you for coming, Allison. Yep.